database. Let's take a look behind the scenes, which kind of databases we might find on a DataMiner system, and also a couple of interesting configurations like how long are my alarms being stored on a DataMiner system. You might want to tweak that. So let's take a look at that. First of all, in the database module, we are going to take a look at the UI. And in there, we will find the configuration of the general database. That's the required database. DataMiner needs that for its operations. There is also an optional offload database. That's more for your own purposes, like running tools or data crunching on there. DataMiner doesn't really need that. It just offloads information and doesn't get it back at any point in time. There is also a possibility to add other databases like CMDB, an inventory database or something like that, so that DataMiner can fetch information from there as well. And we'll wrap it up with the query executor, just a small tool to query information from your database. So we will be looking at the UI here in the System Center database. So let me maybe immediately pull that up in our UI. So we are connected still to dcpdma.skyline.be. If I click on my user icon, I can go to System Center. And within System Center, as I just mentioned, you will find in there the database section. So here in the database section, we will find some information at the top, but we are basically looking at the general, the offload, and the other tab pages. So those are the 3 tab pages we will take a closer look at. We will go through all of them. The general database, you might have indeed several DataMiner agents in your system. So you might have your 3 agents in this case that specify some more information. Before I go into the general and offload database, do also mention that we now also support an indexing engine. That is something you can find more information for in the help. But if I take a look at it, you will basically find it in the search and indexing section here. So in this case, there is no indexing engine yet installed, and you can actually easily install one by following the wizard. And first thing you need to do is check your system configuration or your requirements. And actually, I can see that on this DataMiner agent, we don't have sufficient memory, and it is not recommended to put the same Cassandra and indexing on the same disk. So actually, we fail here on 2 points there. So we don't have the indexing on this DataMiner system, but I do have another system here where it is enabled. So here we do have indexing. How can I also see that? Well, if I go to the alarm console, and if I add an additional tab page, you will see that you can immediately search for your alarms. And if I search, for instance, for bitrates, instead of downloading all the alarms of, we're looking at last 24 hours here, downloading all the alarms of the last 24 hours and then doing a client-side search, it basically queries the information from the indexing search engine there, and it immediately gives me back all the bitrate alarms that I had in the last 24 hours. So that's how you can easily see if your indexing is available, and we do require also the indexing for other purposes, like for instance SRM. So more information is getting into that indexing with other modules as well. So you might need to install that. Next to the indexing, I also want to mention if you're still running on MySQL or SQL Server, so you can see this one is running on Cassandra. We do still support MySQL or SQL Server, but it is recommended to actually upgrade or migrate. And you can see if you are running on MySQL or Cassandra, you will have at the bottom a button that allows you to go through a wizard to just prepare your system for Cassandra, and also then do the migration and move the data from MySQL to Cassandra. It has advantages to use Cassandra because it's a big data database where we can actually have more data in there for trending purposes, a lot faster than in MySQL. There's a big difference there. And also it allows you to leverage new goodies like the trend prediction and other AI stuff, which is only available using Cassandra. So you do have to go to Cassandra to leverage all those goodies. Now, that being said, let's take a look at the first tab page, the general tab page. So as I just mentioned, you do have the possibility to choose Cassandra or MySQL or SQL Server, but let's just assume Cassandra for now. You do have the possibility to install a Cassandra for every individual DataMiner agent. So each DataMiner agent or DMA has its own database to store the information in there. Or you can at the top also now go for one Cassandra cluster for all your DataMiner agents. That allows you to have one cluster of Cassandras managing all the information. So if one node goes down, you still have if you have replication factor of more than one, then you still have your information available. So it does has some advantages to go for that Cassandra cluster. If you would still have the MySQL or the SQL Server, you would see also a limitation that you can activate, so that if you are reaching, for instance, 300,000 alarms, that it would immediately do some cleanup to 250,000 alarms. This maintenance is only available for MySQL or SQL Server. For Cassandra, it works with time to live. How does that work, the time to live? That is something we need to configure, and this is very interesting because there you define how long the information is being stored in DataMiner. It is within system settings, time to live. And in there, you will be able to specify how long your real-time trending needs to be stored. By default, 24 hours, but you can go to 48 hours or maybe even more. You can also define how long the 5-minute records and the hour records for the average trending are being stored. So by default, we store the 5-minute time slots for the averaging for 1 month and the 1-hour time slots for 1 year. You can actually tweak that in here, and you can also add a third records as well, the day records that you can also configure. That's how long your trending needs to go back in time. So that's very important that you can configure that over here. For the monitoring, you can also define how long your alarms are going back in time. So by default, we are going back 1 year. Also, Spectrum Traces is available. You do have the defaults at the top, but at the bottom, you do actually have the possibility to override these limits for certain protocols. So you could say like, okay, the default is like 1 year of trending, but for my Microsoft servers or for a specific type of encoders, I want to go back 2 years. So you do have the possibility to add in here an additional item like a Microsoft platform driver and define the thresholds on that specific driver. Now, an important note to make is the time to live. How does that work? It is actually defined when inserting the information, or let's say the alarm, for instance, into the database. So if today my configuration is on 1 year and I generate some alarms, they go into the database and they will be there for 1 year, and after 1 year they will drop out. If I now reconfigure this and I say, for instance, only 100 days, then it doesn't apply to the alarms that I just generated before. They are already in there. They will stay in there for 1 year, and you cannot change that anymore. It's only for the newly generated content that the new limit that I specified of 100 days, for instance, will be applied. So it's not immediately cleaning up or something like that, and that's only for the new inserts. Note that the TTLs, the time to live, can also be configured for the legacy databases, MySQL, SQL Server, so you can combine that with the previous limits that I defined of number of alarms. So the time to live, definitely something to remember and to check it out. So let's take a look at it on our DCP DMA. So I do have a general database. I only have one agent, so one database per agent I have here. So my one agent has Cassandra with the configuration details. Typically this is configured, so we don't really need to worry too much about it. Do note, this is running localhost, but you can also have a dedicated server next to it that hosts the Cassandra. So it doesn't necessarily need to be on the same machine, of course. So it has a local Cassandra cluster. Let's take a look at the time to live. Therefore, I need to go to the system settings and I need to go to the time to live. In the time to live, you will see that trending, the monitoring and the element, and the possibility to override it for a specific protocol. So for instance, if I say for the Microsoft platform, any version, I can add an item in there and say like they need to have more trending and define the hour limits, something like, let's say 700 days, for instance. So I did an override on that one. Of course, you can tweak any of the items here as well. So if I would say like in this case, 500 days for the hour records, if I apply that, it will be applied, but only for the new items going in there. You can always go back to the default by clearing, and then you can see what the default value is that DataMiner applies. Okay, so I'll just remove that and leave it default again. So time to live, definitely something to take a look at and make sure that it's correctly configured according to your needs. Now that's the database we had that DataMiner requires. We do also have the possibility to offload information. First of all, we have in the type at the top the possibility to offload. Let me show you in the UI as well. Go back to database and go to the offload. We do have the possibility to not do any offload to a database or to files. You can also go to file offload, and then basically you could have another process of your own, which is picking up those files and dumping in them or inserting them into a proprietary or an alternative source or destination, I should say. Now to take a look at it, so you can configure out of the box a database like MySQL, SQL Server and Oracle. And you can configure where the database resides. So typically that's going to be on some kind of central server that I want to push that information and offload the information in there. You can also find more information in the help on how to set up an offload database that's conveniently available in the help if you would like to do so. Because as I mentioned, this is optional. DataMiner only pushes information there if you configure it, but we don't need that. So it's only going to generate additional load, you could say, to be able to push that information. Once it's pushed in there, it's your job to keep maintenance on that database and to do something with it. DataMiner will never pull information from that database, and it will not do any clears or deletes on there as well. Now, at the bottom, we do find some configuration on what we want to offload. Let's take a look at it. So we have basically three sections. We can offload alarms to that database, central database. We can offload trend information like performance data and also real-time parameter values. So we have three things we can offload to that database or to the files. So for the alarms, you can configure the different alarm tables without going into too much detail. There is several tables containing all the alarm information and specify the remote table. For the trending, we can offload two things, the data offload and the data average. So data is real-time trending, and the average, that's the 5 and the 60-minute time slots. You can again have more details like all parameter values each time or only the changes for the real time once every 5 minutes or so. Several configurations or additional things are configurable here. For the average data, if it's only the 5 minutes or the 60 minutes or both, you can all define that nicely in there. For the parameter values, that's basically a real-time value, a snapshot of your system you can just dump into the offload database. So you can again say like for all the parameters that are activated for snapshots, offload them every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes, for instance. You can also define whether it only needs to store the latest value or all the values consecutively. Note that the snapshot offload only happens on parameters which are tagged specifically for snapshots. You can do that in a driver, but you can also do that in the information templates. Just to quickly show you that, if I go to some of my devices I created before my training Microsoft BERT, and if I go to the available templates, we have configured there a BERT information template that overrules certain information coming from the protocol. Like for instance, the available physical memory, we changed that to available mem. And the CPU load, we changed that to the total process load, we changed it to CPU load. Well, at the very bottom, if I scroll down, you will have the possibility there to enable this one to be part of the snapshot, yes or no. So you can actually tag here in an information template which parameters you want to include in that snapshot. And if you activated those and you go to the parameter value there, you can activate it and you can define like every 5 minutes, for instance, take a snapshot of those parameters and dump them into the central or offload database. As I mentioned, not required for DataMiner operations, only for your own tooling, you could say. The third tab page defines other databases. It might be that a DataMiner system has some other databases like an CMDB, an inventory database. These kind of things can be added in there so that DataMiner can query information from that. Without going into too much detail, this is more in certain conditions we need that. So typically you don't need to configure that yourself. Now, the last tab, the last page that I want to discuss here is the query executor. The query executor is a quick tool that is available within the tools section on System Center, and it allows you in the query executor to execute a certain database or execute a command or a query on a certain database. So you can immediately connect to a database here and execute a certain query and see the result back at the bottom there. Be aware, this is something you only want to give to like a super admin, I would say, because you can do any queries on there. So basically DataMiner writes are available on the database, and you could also do deletes. So be careful, you don't just give that to anybody. This is more like a super admin tool, you could say. Now, let's take a look at that in our UI as well. So to summarize it again, so on our DCP DMA, we have the Cassandra database, and there we have no maintenance here because that's only available for MySQL and SQL Server. So remember that maintenance is configured here in the time to live. So that's where we need to be for defining how long my data is being stored in the database. The offload, so we do offload to a database here. It's a MySQL somewhere on the network here. Connection details are specified here, and we just offloaded the parameter of snapshots there, but also alarming and trending can be offloaded there. There is some two databases available here without going into too much detail. So we do have the query executor that I still wanted to show you. So within the tools, the query executor, we can choose to query it on one of the DataMiner agents or on the offload database. We do have on the DataMiner itself a Cassandra database. So I just have like a quick query here. We can execute that and we can actually see some of the tables in the SLDMA DB key space that are available, just to show you a quick example here. So that's the database page. Remember that we do have that Cassandra database that we need. There is an optional offload database, and there is also that query executor. Make sure you take a look at your time to live configuration, that all those settings are according to your needs. See you in the next one.